So we have to prepare for a more angry world, and how to prepare? It means to take the necessary action.
But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet, are for our actually younger leaders of the world. Right?
Welcome to a harsh reality broadcast on the 3rd of February 2024 titled, "We Are on Borrowed Time." The world is becoming more chaotic and unstable. It's clear we are moving into dangerous times. To be honest, this is simply a cycle that's been in existence for many centuries. Not enough people will be prepared for the hard times ahead due to their normalcy bias, that's to say, the experiences they had in the past, is expected to continue. This is going to be a major shock and will overwhelm many people. Too many problems are coming to a head all at once. It is said that history repeats itself. Well, not quite. History quite clearly shows we have cycles of good and bad times. Unfortunately, we are now entering the cycle of bad times. It's unavoidable. However, what should not be unavoidable is the way we address this problem. Quite simply put, governments have abused fractional reserve banking since 1971 following Richard Nixon taking the dollar off the gold standard. This allowed economies to spend well beyond their means. The party is over. The national U.S. debt is now over $34 trillion. It's a very large number. It's also rising exponentially and unsustainable. The members of the World Economic Forum know this and are putting in measures to address the problem. Unfortunately, for the average person, the measures will be draconian. Could we have avoided the unsustainable debt we now face? Well, yes, if we had honest politicians that managed to keep good housekeeping and told the population straight that we cannot get something for nothing. Instead, the politicians promise the earth to a fickle public. I am not going to sugarcoat what we face, and although my views are slightly right of center, I try not to fall into the trap by supporting blindly people who have conservative views. That said, I shall examine the World Economic Forum 8 predictions for 2030. 1. You'll own nothing and be happy. I find this surprising that the World Economic Forum would admit to this, as most of the population would be outraged by that statement. However, we can see this starting to happen. People are being financially squeezed with high energy bills due to the move towards net zero, and higher interest rates due to inflation rising faster than wages. So if we own nothing, who owns everything? As we are forced to give up our property due to slowly going broke, BlackRock would be quite happy to purchase it and rent it out to the general population. 2. The US won't be the world superpower. We can already see the decline of the US, and it appears that it is intentional. Too many people relying on the state with handouts. The population have been dumbed down and weakened by the woke policies. A nation of fragile and entitled people is starting to take grip. Have a look at this video.
Professor Bridges, you said several times, you've used a phrase, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing that.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
Because of my line of questioning? So we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist
I'm
is
denying that
dangerous.
trans people exist by asking you if you're talking about women having pregnancies?
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can get
So
pregnant.
you are denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence? Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you? Or are
Absolutely.
they also treated like this, where
No,
they're
they're
told
allowed
that
to
they're
question me.
opening up people to violence?
We have a good
by
time in my
questioning?
class. You should join.
Oh, I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot
I
just in this
know,
exchange.
absolutely.
Extraordinary.
Yep.
Wow, did you see those eyes of the woman professor? Well, I say woman, maybe she, he, shim or whatever wants to be called something else. Crazy stuff, and yet this professor can influence many youngsters. What surprises me is that the establishment encouraged this crazy behavior. Have a look at this.
Mulvaney is clearly a fool, so why do we keep talking about him? Just ignore Mulvaney, people say. But never forget, it wasn't uptight conservatives who pushed Mulvaney into the limelight. Most conservatives hadn't even heard of Mulvaney until the President of the United States, no less, decided to make the gender narcissist a public spokesperson for human rights. President Joe Biden granted a sit-down interview with Mulvaney to discuss trans rights in October last year. Now, White House journalists can barely get an interview with Biden, but Mulvaney got a one-on-one chat just 2 weeks out from crucial midterm elections. Mulvaney began the chat with this.
Mr. President, this is my 221st day of publicly transitioning.
God love you.
Well, I'm certain God does love Dylan Mulvaney, but I'm not sure that we should give everyone God loves an international platform, which is exactly what the leader of the free world went on to tell Mulvaney that he wanted to do. Biden said it was important to him to be seen with Mulvaney in order to break down stereotypes and to normalize Mulvaney's experience.
I'm not being facetious when I say this, being seen with people like you. No, I mean it. I genuinely mean it. People fear what they don't know. They fear what they don't know. And when people realize, individuals realize, oh, this is what they're telling me to be frightened of, this is the problem, people change their minds. People just don't know enough to know.
Mulvaney is a man identifying as a woman, claiming to be a lesbian, hoping to be impregnated by a woman. And President Biden says the public need more exposure to this. I'm not questioning Mulvaney. Mulvaney should be free to do as he pleases. But you've got to ask why the President of the United States wants a cut of the action. Speaking of which, don't ever forget that major US brands from Nike to Maybelline have showered Mulvaney in money to promote their products. Western corporations have made Mulvaney a millionaire, while decent people are struggling with a mortgage and school fees. Critics like to portray Mulvaney as a joke, but Mulvaney is increasingly the face of Western culture. As President Biden says, God love you. And if I might, God help us.
Mr. Cepeda, are you a sexual pervert? It has nothing to do with you. Why are you telling us to leave?
Because you can't take film in here.
We see, look, there's people right there in the front row recording. Look at that woman in the corner.
I don't see anybody recording.
What are you talking about? And the thing is, why? Why is this being tolerated? But the real story is they are protecting what we think might be a sexual pervert, a 50-year-old man swimming with girls who are minors and apparently changing and showering with them too. You know what? They said they're calling the police on me. I'm calling the police on them. We finally have a definitive answer to where Nicholas Cepeda changes and showers. It is in the girls' dressing room. I saw it myself with my own eyes. He didn't go into the male dressing room. He didn't go into the family dressing room.
Being a reflector, I often think why the establishment is encouraging this strange behavior. I can only conclude they are weakening the population on purpose to prepare for the population to be fragile, therefore easier to control when Agenda 2030 is implemented. Okay, number 3. You will not die waiting for an organ donor. The World Economic Forum claim they won't transplant organs, they will print new ones instead. Whilst I embrace the technological progress, there is a dark side to technology, as illustrated in the following video.
So, first off, a video. It's going to make you see the future and understand a wonderful future where we can use brainwaves to fight crime, be more productive, and find love. Let's roll.
You're in the zone. Even you can't believe how productive you've been. Your memo is finished, your inbox is under control, and you're feeling sharper than you have in a decade. Sensing your joy, your playlist shifts to your favorite song, sending chills up your spine as the music begins to play. You glance at the program running in the background on your computer screen and notice a now familiar sight that appears whenever you're overloaded with pleasure. Your theta brainwave activity decreasing in the temporal regions of your brain. You mentally move the cursor to the left and scroll through your brain data over the past few hours. You can see your stress levels rising as the deadline to finish your memo approached, causing a peak in your beta brainwave activity right before an alert popped up, telling you to take a brain break. But what's that unusual change in your brain activity when you're asleep? It started earlier in the month. You send a text message to your doctor with a mental swipe of your cursor. Could you take a quick look at my brain data? Anything to worry about? Your mind starts to wander to the new colleague on your team, whom you know you shouldn't be daydreaming about, given the policy against intra-office romance. But you can't help fantasizing just a little. But then you start to worry that your boss will notice your amorous feelings when she checks your brain activity and shift your attention back to the present. You breathe a sigh of relief when the email she sends you later that day congratulates you on your brain metrics from the past quarter, which have earned you another performance bonus. You head home jamming to the music, with your work-issued brain-sensing earbuds still in. When you arrive at work the next day, a somber cloud has fallen over the office. Along with emails, text messages, and GPS location data, the government has subpoenaed employees' brainwave data from the past year. They have compelling evidence that one of your coworkers has committed massive wire fraud. Now, they're looking for his co-conspirators. You discover they are looking for synchronized brain activity between your coworker and the people he has been working with. While you know you're innocent of any crime, you've been secretly working with him on a new startup venture. Shaking, you remove your earbuds.
What do you think? Is it a future you're ready for? You may be surprised to learn that it's a future that has already arrived. Everything in that video that you just saw is based on technology that is already here today. Artificial intelligence has enabled advances in decoding brain activity in ways that we never before thought possible.
Choice. They want to control our lives. Is that why Bill Gates is buying up farmland? Is that why the World Economic Forum is forcing the farmers to go bankrupt under the umbrella of saving the environment? Good luck with that. The farmers are waking up, and the population are waking up to the sinister agenda. The question is, will the World Economic Forum double down and try to crush the farmers? The next video shows the pushback from the farmers.
Farmers across Germany converged in Berlin to join a giant protest. Some 3,000 tractors, 2,000 trucks, and an estimated 10,000 people crammed the avenue leading to Berlin's Brandenburg Gate. They are protesting against the government's plans for higher taxes on farming operations and for fair prices for their products.
We cannot allow food production to be centralized, otherwise we will be at the mercy of the state. Prediction 5 claims 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change. We'll have to do a better job at welcoming and integrating refugees. Wow, just look at the Biden administration. They are allowing migrants to flood in at the southern border. It's not even to do with climate change. They are economic migrants. Their culture is so different to Western cultures. Also, we have no idea what type of people who are coming in. For all we know, they could be terrorists. New York is a sanctuary city and is suffering with the influx of migrants. It's only a matter of time before there will be massive social unrest. Already, the New York police officers have been attacked by a gang of migrants, and this is only the beginning of what is to come.
Texas is not backing down in its fight against the Biden administration over the border.
Greg Abbott has declared the border crisis an invasion. Section of the border being blocked with razor wire and fencing.
Governor Abbott wants this confrontation.
Texas, New Hampshire, California, more and more organizations demanding to leave the United States are being established in subsequent states. I know it sounds abstract, but currently the divisions in the U.S. are becoming more and more visible. Texas provides a recent illustration of this phenomenon. The Supreme Court recently authorized federal officials to remove part of a barrier the state was erecting along its border with Mexico. That action had the effect of overturning Governor Greg Abbott's decision not to allow control to be ceded to federal officials.
A legal battle at the southern border over razor wire installed by Texas officials to stop migrants. The Supreme Court tonight giving the Biden administration a win in its effort to remove that wire fencing.
I feel sorry for most of the migrants. They obviously thought they would get a better life in the U.S. Who can blame them for trying to live the dream? However, the reality is that they are making life a nightmare for themselves and the indigenous population. The problem is dire. Too many people competing for limited resources. I predict massive civil disobedience. I truly believe that the Biden administration is to blame. They should not have allowed the invasion in the first place. Western governments and the World Economic Forum have a lot to answer for. Maybe, this planned, just maybe the World Economic Forum wants an angrier world. If that is achieved, we may support the introduction of an authoritarian state, to regain control. Okay, let's have a look at prediction 6. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. We seem to be going down the road of carbon credits, which will lead to rationing. For example, if you want to go on holiday, you will be debited carbon credits, and when you run out of them, you will have to wait another year before they are replenished. Prediction 7. You could be preparing to go to Mars. I noticed they don't give a timeline on this. In my opinion, this won't happen for at least another 50 years. There are too many obstacles to overcome, such as the high level of radiation in deep space. Prediction 8. Western values will be tested to the breaking point. I believe Western values are already at breaking point by design. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is trying his best to secure the southern border, yet the federal government are putting obstacles in his way. The federal government will only intervene by introducing a bill, stating that they will act if there are more than 5,000 migrants crossing the border a day and that there are a set of conditions to provide funds for Ukraine. I predict the bill will be rejected. The southern border at Eagle Pass will be secured by the support of the Republican governors and that the migrants will switch to California to enter the U.S. After all, Gavin Newsom has promised aid for the migrants. However, I suspect people will wake up and realize that their quality of life will suffer. Hopefully this will be a slap in the face for the woke left, virtual signaling zealots. The near future looks rather bleak for Western economies. Too many problems coming to a head. We have the World Economic Forum doubling down, the migrant crisis, the farmers' protest, the infiltration of the woke left and a prospect of World War III. We just must accept we are now in a cycle where we have to get used to a tougher near future. They say good times produce weak men produce hard times produce strong men and strong men produce good times. We are now in the cycle where weak men produce hard times, and just have a look around at the crazy nonsense that is about. At the end of this presentation, there is a clip from Gerald Celente that sums up perfectly the future we face.
One of your functions over time has been to communicate scientific knowledge to the public.
Yeah.
And that's why I was quite surprised to hear you talk about the idea that we all exist on a spectrum where you wake up one day and you feel like you're more female and more male.
The XXXY chromosomes are insufficient because when we wake up in the morning, we exaggerate whatever feature we want to portray the gender of our choice. suppose no matter my chromosomes, today I feel 80% female, 20% male. I'm gonna put on makeup. I'm gonna do that. Tomorrow I might feel 80% male. I'll remove the makeup and I'll wear a muscle shirt.
When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. Murders in the city up 30% in June. When people lose everything, have nothing left to lose, they lose it. I want to say this back in the end of February. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it, and they're losing it everywhere.